Ever since I was a kid, autumn, and Halloween in particular, has been my favorite time of year. When leaves start changing colors, the weather gets that sort of chilly where you can start wearing thicker clothes, but you don't really have to. People are eating loads of apples, drinking tons of cider, carving pumpkins, going to harvest festivals, and getting lost in corn mazes. It's amazing. And then pair that with getting to wear costumes and decorate with all of these cute and spooky things, watching scary movies, stuffing yourself with candy. It was a dream come true as a kid. As an adult, it still holds true too. I may not get to go trick-or-treating nowadays, but you know I'm still taking advantage of giant bags of candy at the grocery store. Plus, my province always holds this huge convention every year around Halloween called HalCon. My friends and I get all dressed up in fun costumes and make our way down to that. So, in essence, Halloween has kind of turned into a 3-day long event now that I've grown up, and I look forward to it constantly. Now, this year there is a pandemic and HalCon is cancelled, but that doesn't mean the Halloween fun has to stop. There are loads of things to do with family or small groups of friends, and tons of movies, TV, cartoons, and games to play. This year, I thought I would take advantage of some of these and check out one franchise in particular which really captures the essence and spirit of Halloween. That's why today, we'll be checking out a game called Costume Quest. My first impression of Costume Quest, just from the way it's advertised and the way people seem to talk about it, is that it looks like something that completely embodies that sense of wonder that Halloween always gave me. I mean, it's a game with a nice, cute, cartoony Halloween aesthetic. It's about trick-or-treating, and you get to collect and wear costumes. What else could you ask for, right? Well, I've had this game simmering away unplayed in my Steam library for years, so it's about time I finally boot it up and find out if that impression holds true. The game begins at the home of two of our protagonists, Ren and Reynold. It's Halloween night, and their mother is encouraging them to go out trick-or-treating so they can make some new friends. They're both against the idea of trick-or-treating together, but they don't know anyone else in town, so it's their only real option. So, their mother decides to put one of them in charge and send them out to have some fun. The choice of who is in charge is basically the gender option for the game. It really doesn't matter who you choose, as the characters look nearly identical in their costumes, and when they're in battle, they don't even have their normal character models. The story stays consistent, and the choice just boils down to which pronouns get used throughout the game. I chose Reynold in my first playthrough, so anytime I refer to the characters, it'll be based on that choice, and that'll be reflected in the gameplay footage for this video. After that, you get to go outside and trick-or-treat for that sweet candy. But, the first door you knock on is home to just... This person just refuses to give you candy because your costumes are total garbo. What kind of monster does that? Anyway, maybe the next house will be nicer. Nope. That was an actual monster. And it kidnapped my sister. Nice. Off to a great start. Now it's up to Reynold to chase them down and free his sister from the grasps of the evil Grubbin. But before he can catch up, the Grubbin tosses his sister over this gate, which apparently won't open until all of the houses in the neighborhood have been cleared of candy. And... I did not like that sound. This forces Reynold to lose his temper and attack the Grubbin, which, totally justified. I'm pretty sure she's freaking dead now. And it's at this point that we're introduced to the combat mechanics for the game. It kind of reminds me of Paper Mario in that all of your attacks have a quick time event attached to them, where you have to time a button push or move the joystick, or even mash a button to improve its performance. This also goes for defending, and you can time a button push to take less damage. Later in the game, you also get access to battle stamps, which will enhance your combat abilities or stats in any number of ways, ranging from increased health or attack to new abilities to stun your opponent. These are also kind of like badges from Paper Mario. It's clear where they were taking inspiration from when designing the combat system, and I actually kind of dig Paper Mario, so this is a welcome choice. After you beat this jerk up, you meet Dorsilla the Witch, who is super mad and takes away your costume privileges. This is where we're introduced to another main mechanic of the game, building new costumes. This just consists of searching your environment for pieces of a costume, and once you collect all of the pieces, you unlock a new one to wear into battle. Each of these costumes has unique abilities. Some of them get powers outside of combat, like this robot costume that lets you zoom around on Heelys. In combat, everyone gets a basic attack and a special attack. Depending on the special, you might be dealing damage to multiple enemies at a time, doing loads of damage to a single enemy, or dishing out some extra health to your allies. I'll be honest with you, it really doesn't matter which one you choose, it's all about your preference. The battles in the game are super easy for the most part, and you'll never really be at a huge disadvantage if you choose the wrong costumes. So, just pick the ones you think look cool. I personally really liked the spaceman and this cool flaming scarecrow. This guy just gave me all those Halloween vibes that I thrive on. I actually really liked building a team of 3 costumes because it kind of reminded me of putting together a team of Pokemon, and collecting the costumes was a sort of reward in its own right. Anyway, the opening to this game feels super nostalgic. The focus on the costumes and the Halloween aesthetic as a whole really drives that down. The idea of being a kid who is on a quest to save their sibling and maybe even the world by trick-or-treating is just... The story operates under a classic 3-act structure, which is represented in the locations of the game, as each chapter takes place in a new locale. Chapter 1 is all about trick-or-treating at houses and making your way through that spooky gate so you can find your sister. Chapter 2 is about trick-or-treating at all the shops in the mall so you can get to the candy store and find your sister. Chapter 3 is... It's about trick-or-treating at all the houses in the valley so you can... find your sister. I mean, there's more to it than that, like how Dorsilla the Witch is actually trying to go through a portal to an alternate world full of monsters and use the candy she's collected to overthrow their leader and rule over the world, and literally nothing else. But, yeah, you get the gist. Basically, the game gets repetitive and fast. Each chapter does very little to expand on the story, and story beats get further and further apart as the game goes on, sometimes being separated by an hour of gameplay or longer, which, to be honest, that usually isn't a lot of time for an RPG, but this game is only 5 or 6 hours long. That's nearly 20% of game time between each bit of story. It's ridiculous. The story is also told through speech bubbles, which is usually fine, but they do this weird thing where they want to pace each bit of dialogue with specific timings. There's no voice acting or beep speech or anything of the sort to accompany this. It's a single bloop for each new bubble, and you have to sit through a cutscene for the story to unfold. I'm fine with doing that. I enjoy story in my games, but it's really weird to take control away from the player for this sort of thing, because everybody reads at a different pace. If you're not going to have voice acting in your game, you should probably let the player choose when to advance the dialogue. To be fair, the timings were generous enough that I never felt I missed any dialogue, but there were definitely times when it got close. And that's enough for me. Someone who reads slower than I do may feel rushed to read through the dialogue, and someone who reads faster than I do may feel like they're waiting for each new speech bubble. It completely defeats the purpose of trying to time them dramatically. It's not just the story that fails to deviate into anything more interesting either. All 3 chapters of the game and its DLC, Grubbins on Ice, contain the same quests. Play hide and seek, trade a collectible card, bob for apples, trade another collectible card, trick or treat, rinse, repeat. That's it for the whole game. Just do those 5 things 4 times. The trick-or-treating especially wears me down. Each chapter has around 20 houses to trick-or-treat at. That means 20 interactions consisting of knocking, waiting to find out if there's a monster or an adult behind the door, possibly doing menial combat, and watching your bag fill up with candy. If there is an adult behind the door, this interaction takes around 12 seconds to complete. And if there are monsters behind the door, it takes around a minute and a half if you don't run away. The only thing this accomplishes is making the game feel like a slog. Trick-or-treating is not optional, so you absolutely have to do it to progress the story of the game. By the end of this first trick-or-treating quest, I was already sick of the combat. Of course, I could have started running away from each one, but that still takes time, and you miss out on a chance to get candy, collectibles, and experience for winning. Honestly, I think the trick-or-treating aspect would be fine if it only existed in the first chapter. I know the game is all about Halloween spirit, and trick-or-treating is a huge aspect of that, but there are so many ways to capture that energy as well. They very well could have just outright removed it from the game after Chapter 1, and that alone would have improved the experience. The combat also ends up being entirely uninteresting by the time you even finish Chapter 1. They had a great start with the introduction of the game. They show off that the game is inspired by other amazing RPGs and then just never expand on it at all. You only ever get two actions in combat, which are a basic attack and a special attack, which only really result in having a flashier animation and a small amount more damage. Or it could heal or apply status effects that don't end up doing much. You can also equip battle stamps that give you extra abilities to stun enemies, but these don't make or break regular combat. You'll do just fine without them, trust me. The other thing about these patches is that status effects like the stun ability don't work on bosses. So the only fights in the game that provide any amount of challenge remove all options for strategy. That is, aside from the strategy behind choosing battle stamps, which just attach the ones that give more health or healing. The bosses are just big health sponges, so the counter to that is also being a health sponge. The boss battles are longer and less interesting than the normal fights, which are already lacking depth, and it's a real shame. Oh wait, the game does break its normal structure one time during one of the final boss fights. Dorsilla has an ability that can destroy you in a single hit, and it can only be disrupted by using a stun attack. So if you're the type to rearrange your battle stamps before a boss fight so that you're prepared, and you go into this one knowing the patterns from literally every other fight in the game, you're kind of screwed, which, I mean, usually that isn't that big of a deal, but you also have to sit through the cutscene before the fight again, and this whole ordeal is probably going to cost you like 10 minutes or something, which feels like a lot of time after slogging through the rest of the game before this. Now that I've noticed how repetitive the game is, it's really started to feel like the developers were padding for time. Everything is just sort of plopped in over and over in different places, as if doing the same thing a bunch of times is going to make your purchase feel more worthwhile. Hell, even the things that don't repeat themselves can be improved to do away with this problem. Here's an example. In Chapter 3, you lose your costumes, again, and have to get them back so you can go to the carnival. Nobody is allowed in unless they have costumes. Now, there is a man running a French fry cart in town who offers to give you a fry costume in return for drawing more customers to his cart. There are only 3 customers in total, and they're all fairly close by, just a short walk away. So you walk over to them and use the costume's out of combat ability to get them to follow you back. The problem here is that you could very easily get a conga line of children going so you could bring them all back at once, but the game doesn't let you. I guess your fry costume only smells good enough to bring back one person at a time. It's only a small gripe, but it's indicative of a problem that wriggles its way into every aspect of the game. To 100% the game, you'll also need to collect all of these nasty snack cards. They'll reward you with an extra costume if you can get them all. You can only collect them by battling monsters and trading them with other kids, which means that even though you're battling all of the monsters in the trick-or-treating sections, you likely won't get all of the cards unless you also fight all of the monsters that wander around the environment. These nasty snacks cards, however, are super cool. One thing I can say about this game is that the inspirations are obvious and also incredibly nostalgic. As far as I can tell, these cards are based on a real-world product called Wacky Packages. They're collectible sticker cards that come in blind packs, just like Pokemon or Magic cards would. I love these things. I used to work at this cool candy/novelty shop, and we sold them there, so I used to collect them. Every sticker is like a parody of a real-world product, usually a sort of gross-out version of them, or sometimes just a pun. I love these things, and to finally see a reference to them in anything at all is super cool. Of course, the ones in the game are all gross-out versions of actual candies, and this spin on Wacky Packages fits in perfectly. These sorts of inspirations are what made me really want to look into this game, and it's a huge shame that the actual content is so disappointing. I would love to see a goofier, high-energy, and attention-keeping version of this game and its story, but it's just constantly sort of shoehorned in as what feels to me like an excuse to put a retail price on a product. Even the DLC is like this, which thankfully is free on PC, but will cost you around $5 on console. And in that, they actually decided to include an advertisement to another one of their games. I'm not kidding. There's a cave that you can happen upon if you go exploring, and there's no reward in here other than these Matryoshka dolls that just vomit out this advertisement. It's not even in a speech bubble, it's just a big black box. Thanks, Double Fine. I hate it. To be completely honest, there is a lot of potential behind Costume Quest, and this game really wastes it. It feels like it was either extremely rushed or as though the developers didn't really put care into what they were actually designing. Don't get me wrong, the inspirations for the game are all there and they're amazing, but the mechanics and storytelling are extremely lacking. Costume Quest was, of course, the result of Double Fine's second Amnesia Fortnite game jam. If you're wondering why it's called Amnesia, it's because the studio was working on Brutal Legend at the time, and publishing issues had caused a lot of the developers at the studio to lose morale. So they were told to forget their work on that and make something new, hence the Amnesia. Toward the end of the work on Brutal Legend, they repeated the process, and this is where we got the prototype for Costume Quest. Game jams can be a great way to quickly test out new game ideas, throw them at some people, and see if they work. That's how we end up with brilliant games like Celeste. The usual process here consists of making a game in a very short amount of time, just to see if the minimum viable amount of gameplay is fun, usually focusing on a single mechanic or concept. The idea is that if the game doesn't work, you can fail quickly and try again until you find something that does work. Then, you can take that game away and expand upon it until it feels more complete. I get the feeling from the final version of Costume Quest that isn't exactly what they did with this one. It feels like they found a single mechanic that worked and just decided to drizzle some story and other content in there until the game took long enough to play that they felt they could call it a full game. I have no idea if that's true at all, but for completeness sake, let's check out the prototype. First things first, you can definitely tell that this is a prototype, and that's obviously not a bad thing. Things like graphics and sound are almost always downgraded in a prototype because they take a lot of time. You'll see here that the visual style is extremely similar to the final game, but not quite nailed down yet. Another similarity is that the main gameplay loop consists of trick-or-treating, except this time when adults or monsters talk to the children, they actually have voice acting. I mean, it's a little jarring, all things considered.
Trick or treat, smell my feet, some little kid is about to get beat.
But getting Microsoft Sam to voice all of your characters in a game prototype is actually extremely clever. I might have to steal this idea in the future, honestly. Then there's the combat. This is something that I expect to be pretty similar to the final version of the game because it really is the bread and butter of an RPG, but yeah, no, this is a dumpster fire. I have no idea what's going on here. I guess there are these bars at the top of the screen that fill up to let you know when your abilities are ready to use, and you just spam the attack button until you win? I don't know. There's not even a health bar for the enemy, which is a bit of an oversight, but it is a prototype, so that makes a lot of sense. I'm really glad they decided to rework this. Holy cow. Oh, and then I beat an enemy too fast after getting a new costume and the game just got stuck, so I think that's enough of this for now. It really breaks my heart when a game feels incomplete or when it feels like it wasn't given the love and attention it deserves, and this really is one of those times. The idea behind Costume Quest, that quirky, nostalgic romp through an epic quest on Halloween, is incredible. The game itself, I don't really have much to say about it other than that it doesn't feel loved. I really wanted to enjoy this game, and that's the reason why I chose to cover the series on my channel for Halloween. This is my favorite time of year after all. I'm constantly on the lookout for love letters to the season, and I expected this to be one of those. There is a sequel though, and there's always a chance that they expand on what they already have to make it feel more complete. After seeing how the game evolved from prototype to final product, I still don't have much confidence in it, but a boy can hope. So hang in there, because next time we'll be taking a look at Costume Quest 2. Thanks for watching, have a sinister Spooktober, and I'll see you on Halloween.